Hello and welcome back, Talon 101. This time we're going to look at left uppercut, that's DF1. This is a quick 13 frame hitting mid that majority of the cast has access to. Hwoarang's though is a bit on the unique side, and to understand what makes it unique, we need to look at what the average or standard down forward one even looks like. So I have Jin Kazama here, and his DF1 comes out at 13 frames. Now there are DF1s that come out at 13 to 14, and there's a rare case where their DF1 comes out at 15. If they have a 15 frame DF1, they usually have another move that will fill in that hole for a quick 13 to 14 frame mid. But we're going to start with the 13 frame mid here, just like Hwoarang's. And the first thing you start to see is that the opponent cannot backdash that DF1. That's at +1, and that's at 0 on block. Now, of course, if the opponent cannot backdash that DF1, the same goes for the person throwing it. So if Jin throws out his DF1 and I try to backdash, I will get caught. Now, of course, there is an asterisk here, because if you throw the DF1 out at max range and the opponent's move is short, then lucky you could get a free punish, and that's pretty damn good. But that's not the normal situation a DF1 is getting. What usually happens is 3D movement. So depending on where the opponent's move tracks, Hwoarang's DF1 being pretty much an asterisk in terms of tracking, you can sidestep towards the left or sidestep towards the right to make that move whiff. So sidestep right, which is the place where it's supposed to track, but it's not tracking there, and I can get a punish. DF1 sidestep left, and I can get a punish, and you can even make that a bigger punish into a launch. And lastly, if the opponent gets hit by it, they cannot avoid another DF1. So no backdash allowed right after another DF1. You can simply loop the mid check into another mid check, and if a string is available, that will make the opponent, pretty much think about challenging your DF1, especially when it comes to even tracking stuff. So DF1 by itself for Jin, not catching the sidestep left, but with that second hit, the opponent would have to be really, really quick with their punish option, right? If they want to potentially punish Jin's DF1. And then if we go sidestep right, which it's supposed to generally track for Jin here, we're going to change this to 0 on block. Fantastic. But yes, again, the second hit also will help mitigate some of these woes. If we look at Hwoarang's DF1, and we ask the first question, can you backdash the DF1? The answer is yes. So for a quick 13 frame mid, you can backdash Hwoarang's DF1. That's on block. Now, if we talk about on hit, if you get hit by his DF1, can you backdash it? Yes. Can you sidestep it? Yes. Both ways, yes. Making it a very, very unique DF1, both on hit and on block, because, wow, you are being put at a really interesting situation where you had frame advantage and then suddenly you can lose it. So of course, before we go through the nitty-gritty about what makes DF1 special, Hwoarang's DF1 special, we need to review the frame data. It is a 13 frame mid that is +6 on hit and -1 on block, and will always return Hwoarang back to left foot forward. It's even if you do it from right foot forward, right? So you can do it from right foot forward, and that makes it a very versatile mid, because Hwoarang doesn't really have other mids to use, quick hitting ones rather, because his other 13 frame mid is a -14 punish. It's mainly just for punishing moves at -13, and it's -14 on block. It's only really, really valuable if you have heat active in order to turn it to +5. Otherwise, it isn't something you're throwing out. If we jump the frames to 14, that's flashing trident and up forward 3 +4/4, and you already know this move has no tracking whatsoever. At which point, that's when Hwoarang looks to his 15 frame mids in double hand thrust and DF2, which is what he presses a little bit more often. And then you go to 16 frame mids at forward 2 and down forward 4, most especially, in order to really check the opponent with a mid, outside of doing an instant while standing 4, which would move from 11 frames to 14 frames, and of course, a 16 frame while standing 1. So that's why DF1 is still a must-press move for Hwoarang, because it's pretty much the only thing he's got. Now, let's address that pushback on hit and on block. Let's talk about on block first, because on block, it is very easy to actually utilize this move, because there are characters in this game wherein if they throw out a move, there is pushback on it, and it returns them back to neutral and puts them in a situation that's very, very favorable to them. So a character like Armored King with down forward 4 is similar to doing a Hwoarang DF1 and getting a punish like so. And that's a standard jab. If we change this from a standard jab, let's say to a DF1, an opponent's DF1, and Elisa's DF1 in this case, I can't backdash that. All right, following the rules as mentioned earlier, and it's a very short move, so I cannot, right, really get the max range as often. But as you can see there at the max range of DF1, I can still make this happen. So I could already make shorter moves with at point blank. And if I add the max range on top of the DF1, I can add that sidestep and get my punish and be on my way, right? That's really, really good about DF1. So when you throw out this DF1, you're generally just looking for a reaction from the opponent. What kind of reaction are they doing? Because the ball's in your court when it comes to making a move, you know, whiff. Most moves whiff. Now, if they're throwing out a move that catches the whole place, right? Like a homing move or a move with a bigger hitbox, usually those moves are moves with higher startup frames. And if those moves have higher startup frames, you're only -1, right? And since you're only -1, you can really disrespect and try to steal your turn. So there's a lot of facets that go into DF1 on block. It's a very standard situation. Imagine something like wall standing 4 where there's pushback on block and you can set up that situation. You can set up that situation really, really quickly without the wall standing 4. No need to crouch cancel or crouch dash into it. You can just straight up down forward 1, sidestep to the weaker side of where that move is, or straight up backdash and be on your way. So that's what's a really, really amazing about Hwoarang's down forward 1 or his left uppercut. Alright, Frontier, very straightforward on how to use his down forward 1 on block. I use it to like check the opponent and wait out for what they're doing. What if it happens on hit? You already mentioned there's pushback, right? And pushback on hit, and you showed it with Jin earlier in the intro. I can't follow up DF1 to DF1. You're right, you will never follow up DF1 to DF1. That just will never happen unless the opponent is pressing a button. If the opponent's trying to take advantage of the fact that you can not really press a button, and they're gonna try to steal their turn because you're gonna like try to check them out, right? You're gonna maybe do a crouch dash cancel, sidestep into a block, or even just backdash, then this is when the only time you can really interrupt them. But for the most part, if they're just backdashing away, and it's just like, alright, what do I do? Well, your main option is to throw out DF4. Of course, mind the distance. Max range DF1 will not catch with DF, you know, to DF4 as a follow-up. But anywhere else, you want to follow up into DF4. So if we put this in action, right, and throw out DF1 to DF4, the only time it's an issue is when the opponent employs a Power Crush. Power Crush or a Rage Art armor, basically, because evasive moves will lose to Middle Claymore down forward 4. So if an opponent does that, this is your time to respond with moves that basically cut out that armor challenge, right? And since you're +6, this is where, again, we talked about interrupting with another DF1 to a DF1. That's where that comes in. Now, of course, against a really, really fast Power Crush, at least you can still duck against it. But if that was a Heat Burst, then you're still gonna be safe against it. And that's what counts. That's what matters the most. So DF1 to DF1 would activate. I just didn't put it in. So you're still safe. And that's the best case scenario you can get with DF1 on hit. So you basically force out DF4 to force the opponent to press against your button. And the only button they can generally press here is a 10-frame jab, 10-frame down jab, and an armored move. Or a move with armored properties, right? Because Rage Arts fall under that category. And once they're caught in between that place, that's when you can start implementing other moves like down back 4. But of course, as you can see, down back 4 isn't even on hit. There was a time it whiffed. So it's secondary. It's secondary fiddle to DF4. Now, there is another follow-up in DF1, which is left uppercut to left middle kick, I believe. Yes, it is left uppercut and middle kick, or left uppercut to middle kick. So again, standard DF1, if they have an extra option or a string, it can make the opponent think. So if the opponent was already gonna think, okay, after the DF1, I see the DF1, right? So they see the DF1, they're gonna backdash, right? And they're like, okay, I'm gonna be free. And then they're not free. Now, of course, this is not free in quotation marks, because if the opponent has access to Rage, again, right, you know the most famous option for Hwoarang, whether he does up forward, 3+4 forward into left flamingo stance at -2, you throw out LFS back 1. Same thing with DF1-3, you throw out back 1, because it's the only way you can really get out. But this is pretty much GG's. It's an OS for the opponent if they catch you in one of those two situations, because you can't get out of that. it's over. You know, I'm not avoiding that most of the time. So apparently, against the Lisa's Rage Art, this is not an OS she can implement. Her case in particular. But if we use it against a different character, DF1-3 into LFS back 1, see how I'm not avoiding that? Lars just like zooms at me. So that's pretty much the average experience Hwoarang's supposed to be receiving when he does, you know, left flamingo at -2 on block, whether that be up forward 3+4 forward or, you know, down forward 1-3. You're supposed to lose there. This is supposed to be an OS. So take big care if the opponent has rage. There's also one last thing. That situation is really, really bad against characters who have a true OS against it. King in particular is the character with an OS because using a grab to counter Hwoarang's options here, or counter LFS back 1, Stealth Needle in particular, is very, very strong. And the only way Hwoarang can beat that is by throwing out Reverse Plasma Blade or Flashing Trident. Basically any move that has an airborne state. Now, King's grabs catch opponents, or generic grabs, right? They catch an airborne opponent. So even if I do Stealth Needle, I'll be caught. And then if I do Reverse Plasma Blade, I'm still caught. You have to really take care of who you're using it against, because King's not the only one with this OS. Okay, but bad option aside on block, it's still something to really make the opponent second guess, right? And the fact that it would still potentially catch, you know, an opponent sidestepping. See how the second hit, just like Jin's DF1-4, would find the opponent there, and that's important. And the fact that this is still a full 13 frame punish for Hwoarang. So just to review the frame data, the second hit comes out at 22 frames. It jails. The opponent can't really interrupt the second hit. It's +6 on hit to left flamingo stance. And of course, the dreaded -2 into left flamingo, right? Which is really, really bad on block. But on hit, you know, if you get the +6, you mainly only want to run with 2 options. Number 1, LFS down 4, because it's pretty much pseudo-homing at this point. And LFS back 4-3 on immediate timing. Of course, once you have more data and more experience against your opponent, history rather, then that's when you can really change up timings and move away from immediate timing. But you kind of have to press a button for the most part if you know, entered DF1-3 on hit or on block. At least on block, it's pretty much defaulted to just moving away with back 1 or trying to survive with a power crush, either power crush or that be left thunderbolt or double claymore in LFS back 3 or LFS DF3-4. On hit though, those that 1 mid or 2 mids rather, and those singular low are pretty much the go-tos. Of course, you can use an LFS1 if they're not stepping and you want to recover a little bit faster, but that's pretty much about it. DF1 as a whole needs to be treated differently from the standard DF1. Yes, it does give you frame advantage, and what you want to do is force the opponent to challenge your DF4. You really want to set the stage there because they can challenge your DF4. And if you invite them to challenge that DF4, that's when you can actually get that old DF1 mix-up kind of going back in with another DF1, or perhaps even interrupting them with counter hits or quick moves because you're only really -1 on block, which is such a steal. And then, of course, there's still a secondary option in the string of DF1-3, left uppercut to middle kick, to make the opponent really think like, oh, okay, they're gonna commit to the string, so I'm now gonna hold. And once you got them to hold, whether that because, you know, you were really whiff punishing them, right, for pressing against DF1 and like they didn't know that, you know, your DF1 can really make a move whiff. That's where a lot of these interesting mind games where you could crouch cancel or even DF1 to DF1 or DF1 stance cancel to RFF. That's where all that magic really comes into play. But you really need to enter either A, getting a whiff punish, or B, forcing them to press. Or, you know, trying to see if they'll be afraid to press, hold their button, and whatnot. There's really only 2 routes you got. Going for a DF1 to DF1 is an option, but it's not the option I highly recommend. Not unless that's how you want to gather information first. But yes, that's generally everything I know about left uppercut. That's Hwoarang's DF1, a lot more special compared to other DF1s. I've been Frontier, and thank you for watching.